Yeah.
Ray,
Hey,
Hey,
what's going
what's
on?
going on, man?
not too much. How are you fellas?
Good. Do you
Good,
guys
man.
remember each other at all from
Yeah,
that
it's like
that episode that we did on that ranch or the
we
cult?
probably said hi to each other for like 30 seconds, and then that shit show of a day was, whatever. But
Sounds about right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know you guys went right into the hides, and then that was it, man. You guys were
Well,
all
I mean,
for a while.
you guys, the tech guys, were busy setting up everything and laying down wires, and all the ENG guys we were outside by a campfire, I think, for a while.
Yeah,
And then I sent them out into the wilderness with those horses.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
You know,
funny.
good times, man.
Good times. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Those are the kind of ones you remember, though. Those are, as crazy as what we do is, those are the memorable ones. Box and I still talk about that. And we're talking about it now. And
Yeah.
it's always an adventure for sure. So,
No, I appreciate that. Like what do you call it? I remember I called you up and I was like, "Hey, Dre, I don't know if you're in Boston, when I need some camera ops, if you know any, or if you want to slum it and like hang out with us out in the rain with some horses." But yeah, it's awesome. Like you have no ego about it, and you're able to do it, and we had fun, and we caught up a little bit, and
it was great, actually. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Always grateful for times like that, especially if it means catching up a little too. I think, as we'll talk about today, for me, this whole industry, as much as it's about something that we get to do that we love, and sorry, we're already on. That was my last alarm.
All good. And cue intro. Go.
Yes, it's about the relationships, and so it's cool that we're able to do this, that we're able to catch up on a shoot like that after a long time. And so
Yeah, well, that's why we're doing this type of thing. It's you only have so little time sometimes to actually talk to people on set, outside of your department too, and like just to get to know people behind of what they do. So it's
exactly.
Yeah.
And with that,
so Andre Martinez.
Yeah, let's get into it. And I'm Tony.
Yeah.
This is Open Walkie. We got Jeff Tan. We got Andre Martinez, DP in this industry for over 30 years. That's impressive.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's crazy.
Husband
Most people probably in the industry know me as Dre. But yeah, it's been, I'm not that old. I got a little gray here, going on, but
we all do, dude. We all do.
But the reason I can say over 30 years is because I kind of always knew I was, bound for this, so I got started really young. I was operating old professional tube cameras when I was a teenager, so I've kind of always been into it,
You were a teenager?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't get my hands on a real camera until I was in college. How were you working tubes, like on a PED or something like that?
Yeah, it was a PED camera at church, of all things. So I went to a Christian high school that was affiliated with a church, and they had these old Ikegami tube cameras that they shot their services with and put them on like local cable. So they'd shoot live to tape and put them on the cable station and it would air the next Sunday. But so yeah, by the time I was like a freshman, sophomore in high school, I was operating the cameras for those services, and then would do concerts, things like that. And it was live, so the very first stuff I was doing was, granted it was for a very small local cable, but
sure.
But when you're a teenager and you know that it's live and every move is going to be seen when your red light's on, it was, it was good training ground to, not be nervous later on when moments come up that, for a big moment, or when a producer's,
so you were thrusted into that, like, moments of anxiety early. So exactly. your baseline for anxiety threshold was pretty high by the time you got to your, professional career and,
Yeah, it
advance
really
and stuff
was.
like that, right? Huh. No
From
wonder you're
there,
so chill. That
Yeah,
explains
where
it.
did all this take place? In Boston somewhere?
Concord, New Hampshire,
Okay.
actually.
I'm
Yeah,
actually
so
only an hour away from you right now. I'm in East
cool. Yeah,
Lakefield.
I heard you're in New Hampshire now too.
Yeah, I am. Just temporarily, but
That's cool.
that's cool.
Yeah, so from there, I kind of went to the local cable station. It was actually the guy who at the school, could see like, oh wow, you're really kind of into this. He brought me into the local cable station and said, hey, this kid wants to work, and so they put me behind the camera there too. And I think the second time I ever went into the little local cable station, I was supposed to just be doing a studio cam for one of their little, local TV things, and the other camera guy didn't show, so we had to lock off both cameras, and I had to like direct. So once again, just thrown into the fire right early on, and it was only a 3-camera shoot, but I was making the calls and punching buttons, like my second time there. So.
You were TDing and you locked off the cameras and TD'd the show.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wait, so the guy that you brought you into that, was he like a mentor figure for you, or something like that? Do you know his name? You still remember?
Dave McDonald. Yeah, he was definitely one of my early mentors who got me into it.
Because that's a lot of trust. He just brought you into like a kid onto, and then all of a sudden, just here's the show, basically.
Yeah. Well,
was it
Dave
more
McDonald,
trust, or was it just like you're the only one that can do it? So
lack of crew.
Yeah,
probably a little. Yeah, probably a little of both for sure. I think they trusted me in the fact that they knew I was really into it and devoted to it, and this is what I even back then kind of knew I wanted to do. So it was Dave McDonald who got me in the door there. Then it was Dave Hand was like the guru there at the local cable station. I still remember, who was a big mentor to me. So yeah, I've just kind of always been doing it. I remember when I was a kid, I loved the little Viewmaster thing, and then when I was in 7th grade, my Uncle John, who's a jack of all trades, like helped me pick out a 35 millimeter still camera. And in 7th grade, I bought a Minolta SRT 101, bought multiple lenses for it. He taught me about f-stops and depth of field. And, so had a lot of mentors along the way, for sure.
That's lucky.
No,
Did you wind up ever going like actual like technical school, or was it all like, training from mentors, which is also pretty valuable, and I feel sometimes a little bit more applicable when you have somebody taking under your wing?
Yeah, it really almost is. I think actually being out there and doing it is the best school. I did go to school for it. I went to I played soccer in high school and stuff, and so I played soccer at Division III school, and they also had a film and TV program at Messiah College in Pennsylvania. The cool thing was it was a small liberal arts school, but they had an affiliation with Temple University. So for certain majors, you would spend your second 2 years at their small little campus in Philadelphia, but I took all my film courses and stuff at Temple University. So I kind of had the small school vibe, but with like a university equipment. So, yeah, that was my schooling. And then I moved back home to New York.
Curious, when you did that, did you have like a kind of like a all of a sudden a small fish in a big pond moment, considering you were single-handedly manning stations when you were a teen?
A little bit, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty shy guy naturally, but I always had a lot of confidence when it came to this industry. I always felt like I was a good camera guy, and and that I knew how to light even before I did. So yeah, I just kind of always had a bit of a quiet confidence, and was able to, I think, kind of that helped me ride through. Some of the times when I really didn't know what I was doing, but could still get by.
Nice. All right.
What was the first like, oh shit moment? Like when you came in, you like, shit, this is a lot. I don't know what the
Dude, I
hell.
feel like he's never had one, because the times that I've worked with you and I was like coming up, I was like looking at certain setups or like demands, and I'm just like, how does one do this? And then Dre just come in pretty chill and it happened. So I was just curious. Are you, yeah, it's a good question. You ever have that?
I
Did you think you
mean,
were first one?
that is a good question. And I think, I've definitely had moments where it's like, wow, this is going to be virtually impossible, but like there's always a way, and I think those of us who work in this industry know that, we always make it work, and so maybe because I had those experiences early on, and maybe because I saw that, we always made it work, whether it was pulling cable, for a high school football game through the snow when I was a teenager, or the first time I was working for after school, I was working for an ABC affiliate up in Manchester, New Hampshire. I had moved back home, and we were doing the shoot for Good Morning America, and it was at Killington, Vermont, and it was way below zero. The satellite truck froze. They're trying to get a second satellite truck there. I'm carrying an HMI ballast up this hill and just start sliding back down. We're setting up lights at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And we pulled that one off. When we had to go live, we went live. It somehow just always seems to happen. And so those experiences early on, I think, made it, when I moved to LA and started, getting in an even bigger pond, I just knew that, like, this is what we do in this industry. We make it work one way or another. So I never had that, or even if there was a little in here, I think I was pretty good at never letting it show, and was always confident that we were going to pull it off.
Yeah. Do you ever get like uncertain situations though? I mean, obviously especially when you like grew in the ranks and came into your own as an op or DP and stuff like that. Because, obviously we all know in this industry, not even just in reality, but even in like scripted commercials or whatever, to like, you ever get caught up? Like, people tend to get caught up in like certain clients or producers like anxieties and stuff. And some people do, like, let it affect them, or maybe not let it, but by choice, but like you can't help but let it. But how do you, like, what would you have to say for like people who are just coming up, like, for those tips for like a quiet confidence and not letting it get to you, because you seem to be, you seem to have it down.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, it's partly a spiritual thing. I've always had like a belief in God, and so for me, that's something that I look to hold to, that's bigger than me, and I can be like, this is just a TV show at the end of the day. This is, just a commercial, or this is just one setup. And, even if the worst case scenario happens, I'm going to be okay, And so that's kind of always in the back of my mind, that this stuff we do is, the producers make it seem like a big deal. And sometimes it is, and then like worked on really big shows, but at the end of the day, no one, safety being first, no one's going to die, and so it is what it is. I remember one time when I was back at that little ABC affiliate doing the lottery, for, doing studio camera for the lottery. And I was on the little ball, and I was like, we had done the rehearsal and it was all good. And like, this is going to be, this is easy. And then I'd forgot to unlock my ped. And so when we go up there and I'm supposed to, pan to the next ball, the camera was locked, and I jerked it, and like I zoomed out, and like I did totally blew it that time, and the world didn't end,
Well, you just cost somebody their jackpot is probably somebody probably ripped up their ticket because they couldn't saw it.
Yeah.
It is good though. So there is a lot of people on, it's on set when energy affects you in some ways. And I have that issue sometimes too. It's like, I'm more of like an empath where it's like, I feel everything going on. So if it's all going crazy, it's like, I tend to like have to sit there and be like, okay, just control myself and that's it. So
yeah,
different energies on set.
Yeah. If
we
you
can only
be
control
the one that's given the energy that's like calming, then I think you can be the one to bring everyone else down and be like, no, we can make this work, Yeah, this is, we got a lot stacked against us, and we know we got a timeline or whatever, but let's just make it happen. We can do it, And then when you're the one putting that that vibe out there, then everyone else is going to get on board, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's contagious, It's like the way that you carry yourself is contagious. So.
Yep.
Yeah, set an example and lead from the front, which I think, from what I've seen that you've done before. On that show that the three of us worked at, that remember we had that set up outside, like went from inside. I was talking about that with Tony before, like we had the drive up, and then you had to get it, at night, and then you had to go inside, and then this it was a hidden camera show, and with the cover of the inside with the actors blocking step, and then all of a sudden bring it outside to a bonfire. Then we had like a fake SWAT team come in, and you were out in like the fields or whatever. And I remember I only had like a few cameras and then the robos and stuff like that. And I was like kind of nervous, and it was raining. And I was like, Hey Dre, can you take a walk with me for a second? And I was like, hey, what do you think of this setup? Like, any notes, you know what I mean? Like, because, you've done it more times than I have at that point. And I was like, dude, am I on the right path here? Blah, blah, blah. And it would wind up being really, it wound up working out pretty well. And, I trusted you to be out in the, way out. I knew I could trust you to be way out in the field because you could get on a prime lens, get the shots that I needed and stuff like that. And, but yeah, so your experience definitely showed then. But the fact that you had a big show or like big projects already, kind of even when you were a teen, what would you consider your like out of college, your first big show? Because most people think that, a live shot and also TDing and like, that was their big break in the industry, but you had that way early. So what would you consider?
Right. So I worked at the TV station in New Hampshire for about 4 years. And then a buddy of mine and I were like, let's go to LA. I was still single and younger. And so we packed up a Ryder truck and towed my Jeep behind it and went to LA. Really had to grind it out, And so for anyone listening that like is, like, what's it like? Well, back then it was even probably harder because we didn't have like, people had cell phones, but like this was in 1998 when I moved out there. So it was like, I still had a pager and didn't know a soul out there. So it was like a grind, So I would just encourage people to grind it out for one thing, because, you can make it work. A farm boy from New Hampshire can go out to LA and work on all kinds of things and met all kinds of people and traveled to all kinds of places. So I'd say that. But as far as my big moment, goodness, it's a good question.
And because it's all your perspective too. It's like,
I mean, for me, live stuff was always, was still the stuff that was kind of a big deal, because like when it's live, when your red light's on, it's.
Well, when like you're talking about like going out to LA, was there maybe a moment that you landed a job after grinding it out and you were on like a lot, or like you were in LA, like from New Hampshire, and you were like, oh, I'm doing it. Like, do you remember, is there a moment like, do you remember from that?
I think it was probably, I was shooting a thing with Revolver Films for MTV Sports, and I was shooting on film. And with film, it's not like you can see your viewfinder there, and as long as you don't double punch, you're good. On film, it was like, man, I hope my meter readings are right, and I hope that like nothing's jammed, or that there's no air leak or light leaks and things like that. So I think that was probably like my biggest moment, where like, wow, I'm out here in LA, I'm shooting this big MTV Sports Music Festival, and we're shooting on film. And if I do anything wrong, like, because we kind of were spread out. So what, like the DP was a guy, Steve Priola, who's a really great guy, and he brought me on, but I was kind of had to go out and do my own thing, and so here I am with a film camera responsible for that. So that was definitely one of my first moments where I was like, whoa, this is like, I can't screw this up.
Nice. To go back to that, what do you call it? The grinding it out for the younger, people who are listening, or people who are starting out, like, what would you say? Because, obviously when you in late 90s and me in the very early 2000s, like we had social media kind of, it was just getting started, but you couldn't rely on it for work. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
there
Like
was like
kind of.
Mandy.com, right?
Yeah, it was Mandy, and then I mean, yeah. Anyways, but like, what would you say to them for like grinding it out? Because to them, to a lot of people, it's like getting on social media, hitting posts, DMs, instant messaging, things like that. And it's all like from afar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
what would you
and
have
I
to say?
think I would encourage that in this day and age. That's similar to what for me looked like, a yellow like legal tab, tablet where anybody I met in the industry, or even anybody on Mandy.com, or anyone I looked up, any job postings that I saw anywhere, I wrote them down, put their number down, called them, took the name of the contact that I talked to, and I would literally, and then to page after page after page, I started making up because I was just cold calling, doing whatever it took, and so every 2 weeks I would call everyone on those pages, just to say, hey, it's Dre, just calling back to see if you got anything coming up, and most of the time it was no, but eventually there were a few yeses, and I remember one time it was even a guy who had gone to LA previous to me from the same little ABC affiliate in Manchester, New Hampshire, that the guys that I worked with said, hey, this other guy moved out to LA before you. You should give him a call when you're out there. I called him pretty much every 2 weeks for a year, and almost a year to the date that I moved out there, he's like, yeah, actually, I need an operator for a show at the House of Blues. Are you available? And bam, that made it all worth it, So I would just encourage them, whatever those contacts look like nowadays through, social media, Instagram, or all that stuff, like be persistent, be the stone in that person's shoe that finally they're just like, all right, I'll hire this guy, like this girl, shoot, but they won't give up.
Yeah, I think that would mean a lot to them hearing it from like guys like us, or especially you and stuff like that. Because a lot of the stuff that feedback I get from people, like when I talk like college kids just coming out of college, or like just starting in the industry, is that they're always like worried or anxious about being like a pest, or like I don't want to bother them, and I don't want to like hit them up too much and be too thirsty and stuff like that. Like, do you think that's like just like are they just projecting? Like, you just go for it, just hit them up, just keep going.
I mean, I think feel it out with each person a little bit, but I mean, I wouldn't be bashful, and I'm, like I said, by nature a kind of shy person, but I just was kind of relentless because I think people do come to appreciate that. Even some people may just totally blow it off, but if you keep hitting someone up over and over, then you'll be like, this person really is persistent. They really mean this. They're not just here, phoning it in or whatever. This is what they want to do. I can tell. Yeah. You can tell.
So with going out to LA, like with your buddy, did you guys like, what was the plan? Like, did you guys just say, fuck it, we're gonna go out there and figure it out, or you actually like had a place like lined up to go and with somewhat of a plan?
It's funny you say that, because my buddy, the one I moved out there with, always used to say, yeah, Dre's plan is not to have a plan.
Sometimes,
and that was it. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
I feel we still say that.
Yeah, right. We maybe knew 2 or 3 people out there. Most of them weren't even in the industry. And so, we had places to crash for a bit, but we didn't have housing lined up. We didn't have any jobs lined up. We just were totally winging it. So luckily we were able to, I mean, I wasn't like one of those who went out there with like $200 in my pocket. Thankfully I had saved up like 10 grand, I think, so I was good for a little bit, but even in 1998, that goes pretty quick, once you start paying rent and all that. So it was important to grind it out like that, to try to start getting some work. So worked on a lot of things for free, though, ironically, just to
I was curious about that.
Initially.
Yeah. Any pro bono, like, do you remember any like kind of like favorite pro bono work stories, or like jobs, or I don't know, maybe any odd jobs you had to do while you were out there to kind of like, make things make do?
Yeah. Worked on some independent films for free, for sure. This movie called Unbowed. Met people on that I, in 98 that or maybe it was 99 by then, but like that I'm still in contact with to some degree, you know? So worked in the camera department as a whatever loader, you know, assistant. So, but I was mostly able to do film stuff. I do remember one time, like I was like, man, I just needed some money. And I went and like literally went to this real estate company, and for probably like a week, I went through files and just, they were trying to like drum up new business from old clients, basically. So I would just go through and write the names and numbers of these people, and then they would cold call these past clients. And
How long?
the funniest thing was that going through them, the one thing I remember most about that weird job was that, oh shoot, now I'm forgetting his name, but one of the guys in there was Freddy Krueger.
How'd you forget his name? Freddy Krueger?
No, Freddy, the actor.
Oh, the actor who plays Freddy Krueger. Who plays
Freddy Krueger had bought $1 million, and it was right, like it was crazy because like I saw all this paperwork. He had bought a house for $1 million in whatever year, and nice. That's like the one thing that I remember from that. But yeah, that's the only job that I remember, probably because that was kind of, you know, that was kind of funny, that little note weird. That I remember.
How long would you last before you wanted to blow your brains out and get back onto a set?
Yeah, I think I maybe even did that for a week, you know, because it was a short-term thing anyways. But yeah, it was probably more like 3 days even. And then I was like, yeah, I'll go out and work on a movie for free, or, you know, something for free again. So
nice.
But that was the funny thing too, is that not long after I moved out there, there was a writer's strike, and so that's kind of when reality TV popped up. And so you know, all those shows in the early 2000s that came about really kind of is what not forced, but like kind of led my trajectory. You know, I mean, most of us, I think, moved to LA and we're like, oh, I want to work in movies, you know, I want to direct or DP movies. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to work on some films and stuff like that, and work with film, even on some TV programming. But at the end of the day, when you're grinding it out like that, you can work on an independent film for $90 a day, or some reality show called and said, we got $500 a day. It was like, well, I got to pay the bills. So, you know, depending how much of an artiste you really are, you know, what are you going to do? So,
right. I feel everybody has this, like, when they're coming up, has this preconceived notion, or like you know, this kind of like idea of being like some sort of auteur in their field. And then, you know, then stuff gets real, shit gets real, and you got to pay rent. Yeah, I remember that. That was like back that time. That was like the heyday of like reality budgets and big shows and giant, you know, things. You know, that was a good time.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And
how did you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Like, you know, making that transition from film to like reality shows and stuff like that. Was it the same, similar, just like meeting people, or did you like see things on Mandy or Craigslist that like people needed ops, or like was it connects? Like, how did you like kind of fall into that like opportunity?
I think it was a combination of all of the above, you know, connections that I had met through working on stuff for free, connections that I met through my buddy who was out there too. He had gotten a job at ESPN, and then he helped me get some days there too, on this show, ESPN Up Close. It was a studio show, but then one of the guys there knew a guy at this production company that I mentioned, Revolver Films, that I did a lot of stuff with. And so I got in with them, and then, you know, they worked on a lot of VH1 and MTV stuff. And so I was working on, I mean, kind of the thing that changed the trajectory the most for me was I got a job on a VH1 show called Bands Reunited. And the director was Ken Fuchs, and Kenny was, you know, he liked working with me, and he was like, oh, you're a good camera operator. He's like, but you should come work on a network show. He's like, I'm the director on The Bachelor. And I was like, oh, okay. And so 20 years ago now, Kenny brought me on as an operator on The Bachelor, and I'm sitting in a hotel room right now working on The Bachelorette, 20 years later. So it's crazy how, all these webs weave together to
it all leads up to that moment of
lead
decision.
up to a moment where, there's a show that I've been working on for 20 years now.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I think the longest I've had was five or six maybe on one specific show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The longest I've had was I think 12 years. But yeah, 20's
20
that's a nice run, dude.
It's pretty
no
remarkable.
signs of stopping.
I know. Yeah. That's the good and crazy thing. Yeah. That it seems to just keep rolling as well. So
what's your favorite thing? I mean, obviously I love Kenny, and that's awesome. When you mentioned his name, I was like, oh, like obviously, yes, that was a good moment. Every time anybody meets Kenny, I've actually been catching up with him and stuff. But what to obviously for people, they stay at jobs for certain lengths of time and stuff. Like, I did like I think 12 years at MTV for a bunch of shows, but mostly for like a specific show, and then I was bouncing around on Bravo for like another 10 years and stuff like that afterwards. But like, what is eventually people have an itch, right? Like they either get bored, or they maybe they want to do something different creatively and stuff like that. What is the thing with like these legacy shows, or the long your legacy shows, the ones that you do the most often, that keeps you coming back and keeps it fresh for you, that makes you like keeps you there?
For me, it's the crew.
Nice.
Honestly. And the relationships, I mean, I still really love the challenges and enjoy doing what I do, and getting to make things look pretty for TV. But, especially on a show like that, where I've been there 20 years and a lot of people have been there 10 or more, it becomes like a family. Like you guys know, when you work, 10, 12, 14-hour days with people, even if you only work on one show with them, you feel like family, I mean, Jeff and I have worked, together for 15 years or more, I'd say,
on and
but
off. Yeah.
On and off. But even though it's on and off, when it's like, when you're grinding it out with people 12 hours a day, they become family. And if you're a person that, relates well with other, or gets along well with others, so to speak, then it's someone that's why you called me, a couple of years ago when we worked together again, because like, oh, good people want to be around good people.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's about the relationships, working with other creative people who want to do their best, who are willing to grind it out, who are willing to go sit in a tent in the middle of the, horse pen,
yeah,
horse corral or whatever, at the crazy wee hours of the night, and call that fun,
I feel like a lot of people talk about that, it's just like the relationships between crew,
the camaraderie.
You do spend so much time with somebody, for a short amount of time, or even, what you're doing, like with a reoccurring crew. And I mean, that's the best thing. It's almost like 10 years can go by with some relationships that you haven't even worked with in 10 years. And then they show up to set, big hugs, like nothing has passed at all. And that's happened multiple times with a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was only with Bachelor with you guys for like 6 years, I think. But even then, in those 6 years out of my career, it's like I had some of the best times and most memorable things. Like, that, like, when people ask me what was one of the top shows that you worked on, or like, it was that would be one of them. And it's mainly for the crew, because of just, the jokes and like, the support for each other and things like that. So yeah, I think that is a saving grace, especially in our industry when it gets tough. You got your friends, your crew family and stuff.
Yeah. Hey, tell us about the 99 days in the Middle East.
Oh yeah. So that was pretty shortly after I'd moved to LA, actually. And I mean, you talk about weird connections. It was my mom was working with a soccer team called the Charlotte Eagles in North Carolina. And one of the players on that team, his dad was going out, or his dad was helping the guy who was financing this documentary slash, it was really just a trip. And then at the, kind of the last minute, he's like, well, I really should document this. He was a history teacher in colleges and wanted to do this journey of the Magi in the year. So it was the year 2000. And he was like, mapped out, what some historians think would have been where the biblical Magi came from that, came to see Jesus. And so he had mapped this out and, had a whole plan. He had support groups in all the different countries. And so I got a call saying, yeah, your mom said you do camera work and you might be interested in this. And so, it was kind of last minute, but we put together a ragtag team and got some gear, and we were supposed to start in Iran, actually. This was probably would have been, I guess, September 2000. And we couldn't get visas at the last minute. So we ended up kind of holed up in a hotel in Baghdad, Iraq for about a week. And then they finally just said, you know what, we're not going to get into Iran. Let's just start from here. And so, 99 days walking and riding camels through the desert, through Iraq, Syria, Jordan, into Palestine, and walked into Bethlehem Square on Christmas night of 2000. So it was pretty amazing adventure and journey. But it started out with kind of like a small group of guys, and then as we went along, it kind of grew. And actually, the soccer team ended up coming over and being a little part of it when we were in Jordan. So it was
that's amazing.
Once in a lifetime type of thing for sure. Before 9/11. So, but even then, there would be times in Iraq when we'd be, our support team would be like, oh, you guys got to put your cameras down. We're walking by like anti-aircraft, missile launchers and stuff. And they're like, yeah, you guys got to put your cameras down. So it was pretty amazing experience.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
What's traveling like about 20 years ago and then now, like on these different shows? Like how do you feel?
How can you compare that show's travel to what you're doing right now?
Yeah, it's definitely, that's on a whole other level, obviously, because we, once we got there, it was all on foot or camels. Literally, we
were the camels trade outs?
I think they probably were. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
But it's funny. People ask me like, man, you just must be sick of it, but I actually still love to travel. Even, just recently on a vacation with my family, we had, it was cheaper tickets to have like the 3-hour layover, on Southwest. And everyone's like, even the kids like who, don't travel that much, were like, oh man, this is so boring. And I was just like, it's just a 3-hour layover.
Usual thing.
I don't let it bug me. I still love to travel. I love airports. I love planes. I love going to new places. So I feel grateful more than anything about the travel.
Well, it's a good, I think that might great segue to like, family life and stuff like that, because like, obviously you have a bunch of kids. And I know like people in industry too, like they either, at least in my experience and my observance, they either have families and they kind of like struggle to make that work-life balance because of the stuff that we do, which is like, we're lucky enough to travel and do long shoots, unfortunately long shoots, sometimes long days and stuff. And I know some other people who choose kind of, and obviously everybody's choice, their thing of, delaying that because some people don't know how to make that balance work, especially with like kids and stuff. Like, what's your perspective on how you make it work in a sense?
It's definitely tough. I'm not going to lie. As much as I say I do love to travel, it's challenging, especially with a family or even just a marriage. I got married and had 2 kids. And then when our kids were about to go into school age, we decided it was time to actually move out of LA, partly for that reason, because it was like, we just didn't want to raise the kids in LA. And I had the Bachelor thing going on, which even, that was 12 years ago now that I moved back home. And it didn't seem like that was going anywhere. So I was like, okay, if I got this, I'll go back to New England and see what's going on in Boston. So moving out of LA and back towards near family was super helpful, because when I was on the road, my wife had support, so, and even from the jump for me, I was super blessed, because the home that I had in LA had a mother-in-law apartment, and my mom came out to live there. So when we had our kids, my mom was there to help,
nice.
And so if I was on the road, my mom was there to help, so having family around is super huge, I think, for sure, if you're married or have kids and are going to be on the road a lot. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out. So even after moving back home and trying to do all the things, we did end up getting a divorce. But and I think I'd be lying if I said that the road didn't have some impact on that. Being gone for long stretches of time like that probably did play a role. So it's tough, but that is the nature of this business, and for a lot of it, there are the local studio gigs that you get to, and things like that or if you need to commit to just being home, there are those possibilities, I think. Most of the stuff that came my way happened to be traveling, and so I took them, and I'm still thankful for all the opportunities that I've had, and I think God had another plan, and so as tough as it's been, and as hard as it is even now, because my kids live with their mom most of the time and are in Indiana. I'm back in New Hampshire now, but I met an amazing woman, and she has 4 kids. I thought 2 was plenty, and now I have 6. So talk about another plan, but it's I'm in a place now where once again, it's still difficult, but we work through it really, really well, and make sure that my wife can get out here to meet me on the road as often as possible, and things like that. So whenever that's an option, I'd say take it, because it's super helpful, because it is difficult. The road aspect of our careers is challenging.
On the road, you said you play music. Do you ever what's that about? That's like a hobby of yours?
Yeah. I've been playing music. Yeah, I got my guitar back there. I've bought a little traveler guitar finally, because you get a lot of dirty looks if you bring a full size acoustic guitar onto a plane these days, with the amount of overhead space that's available. But yeah, I've been playing music and dance and stuff since 9th grade. I've always played music, and write a lot of my own music. My wife and I now write music together. So yeah, it's a nice release. It always has been kind of like my own release, or a little bit of therapy, especially ever since I started writing my own music. But to have that on the road is pretty great, as something to do when you actually do have a little bit of downtime.
Did you record anything, or that's online, or anything that people could hear?
Yeah, maybe we can leave a link to our site, but it was too easy, and even though cheesy, not to call ourselves that. But we're Meg and Dre. My wife's name is Megan, and I'm Andre, so they just meshed together perfectly. So Meg and Dre is what we play as when we play out and stuff. So I can shoot you guys the link to that, to our
That'd
page.
be great. I've never heard you I don't think I've ever heard you like, sing or play or something like that. That's awesome.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to play something right now, if
No
not,
pressure.
that's fine. The link is good.
No, it's great. It's good to have that balance too, like that other passion other than, to kind of offset work. You know what I mean? When everybody has their own things that they like to get into, like whether it's like, their own hobbies or other passions. And that's great that you have that to offset
Yeah.
that and your family and the sport and everything like that. It's great, man.
Yeah. When I first moved to LA, actually, that was like, I was doing it a ton, because I was single then still and writing a ton of music. And so I was playing open mics and coffee houses, and actually ended up like playing one place where this guy really heard me and really liked my music and started booking me in places. So I was playing the Joint and, all these LA clubs actually quite a bit when I was there early on. I even got to play the Whiskey one time. So yeah.
Nice. Whiskey Go Go?
The Whiskey a Go Go, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
One time.
What a legend.
I know.
Good
I wish I had the picture still. I can't find it, but I had a picture with my name up on the marquee at the Whiskey a Go Go once upon a time. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Dude.
What so like, going from the past into like the present and stuff like that, like where do you see kind of like your career? Like, obviously like you knew what you wanted to do, like it clicked for you when you were a teen, and then you took the chance, went to LA, things like that, and you kind of made it, you got a family and everything like that. Like, what do you see your career then? Like, because
Yeah, I feel like I've been super blessed, to be able to have that story of going to LA and getting to meet people who, believed in me enough to get me on a lot of cool projects and work on some really great shows with some really great people was great. And the fact that it afforded me, after making all those contacts, being able to move back home and still work in the industry was huge. I literally ended up building a house in what we used to call the big field that was, my grandfather's farmland that I grew up on, so I literally came full circle.
Nice.
But I'm still able to work in this industry, some of it based out of LA from the contacts I made. When I came back, I figured, in Boston, I really would like to work on commercials, so that I just like the craft of commercials where you have more control than a reality show, and really being able to craft the lighting, craft the shots so I was, that was kind of my desire when I first came back, which was 12 years ago now when I moved back home. But as it ended up happening, there was some reality shows going on in Boston at the time. So I didn't even try, but got calls, once again, what a blessing though, that I just roll back there and I, everything from the opposite ends of the spectrum to I worked on a show called I Found the Gown and Wicked Tuna, and I got DP offers on these two shows because of the connections that I had back in LA. So I worked some on Wahlburgers and some of these other shows that were going off in Boston area. And so I kind of felt like I was still, pigeonholed a bit, but like grateful, that, this reality world is so prevalent that I was getting these calls and working on these shows. But after COVID and things had kind of died down a bit, my goal kind of now is to kind of get back into more of the commercial stuff. It's especially with a family, if you can have a scout day and 2 shoot days as opposed to, 2 months or 2 weeks where you're grinding it out 12 hours a day. That's kind of what I'm working toward more. And so thankfully I've been able to land some of that stuff back home in the New England region. So working with still some of the buddies that I knew from way back at the TV station. One of them owns a few of them own their own companies now, actually, and their production companies. So I'm shooting commercials with them. And I have a buddy from high school that was like, worked at one of the big agencies in Boston as the Dunkin' Donuts creative director for years. But he has his own company now and does mostly commercials. So that's kind of my goal right now, is to kind of work more in that vein, and so I can be home more and have shorter shoots, but still be in it and working on creative things.
Yeah, it's a good goal to look forward to. That's good.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, do you have like a reel or anything like that we could link to? And
I should, but
that's what I say too, dude. We all say the same thing.
I know, it's crazy. I feel like so blessed that I've been, since 1998, I've had a reel, I think twice, and my last one was on, I think it was, I don't even know if it was on like a DVD. Like my last reel was literally on a,
an SVHS.
In the, no, I think it was literally on that. I think it was on, not Beta SP, but a what was it?
An IMX.
Digibeta.
Digibeta. The blue ones. Got it. Not the green ones.
Yeah, that's how blessed it is, man.
I'm dating myself right now.
I know. Yeah, we are for sure.
Look it up, kids.
That I really haven't had to have a reel. It's been word of mouth for 20 years, which almost, which is, I'm just super grateful for,
Well, it's a testament to the young people coming up on the testament to your grind is that, word of mouth, as long as you keep up with your contacts and make good impressions and stuff like that, people will remember and continue to pass your name along. So
yeah. I think I think having put that emphasis on relationships, especially as a department head, as a DP, on shows that have big crews where you do meet a lot of people, and if you treat everyone with respect and or kind to everyone, and not with perfection obviously, but if that's your goal, I think people see that, and then then you're going to get the call from a guy who was your AC 10 years ago but now's a DP, and he's like, hey, you want to operate on this thing, or do you want to and I don't have an ego when it comes to like that kind of stuff. Like, I'm always game. So I think once again, if you put relationships first, then the work will come, because people want to work with you, and if you have the skill level, that's a bonus.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I was just gonna ask if you have any advice to throw out there, but that was really good.
That was pretty good. You mentioned that you do you've done some mentoring, or you had some talks with people coming up and stuff like that. Do you do it like a one-on-one thing, or is it through a program or anything like that?
Usually it's just kind of word of mouth. I've had people say, oh, I have a cousin or a daughter or, or whatever. And actually right before I came out on the road this time, actually it was a buddy of mine that I'd known. Actually, I guess it was post-college. He was college buddies with my younger brothers, actually, but we all hung out a lot. And his son now is a junior in high school and is, really into making short films and wants to get into the industry. And so, I made it a point before I left to bring or to meet up with him and his dad at a local production company where in Derry, New Hampshire, Studio Lab, which is this really amazing place in New Hampshire, that there's a lot of young guys that are just doing really cool stuff. They have 3 different studios now there, or stages. And they have, a really cool robotic arm. They have a massive video wall. And so, I brought him in there and, introduced him to all the guys in there, but also, just kind of told him my story. And so I've been, blessed throughout the years, whether it was my Uncle John, who helped me buy a 35 millimeter camera, like I said, Dave McDonald, Dave Hand, Terry Murray is a guy that was a guy that I worked with at the little ABC affiliate in New Hampshire that had been a New York guy for years and years. And he was working there. And so he had worked on big stuff and was a lighting mentor of mine. And so, man, Kenny Fuchs, changed the course of my life, by bringing me onto a show. So I just want to be able to be that for other people too, and help either steer them in a direction or even, help them get a job if it be that, if I feel, I think you can kind of tell the people who really have that passion and have that desire. And I want to be able to push them along, or help them along. So
that's good that you talk about that, because we were actually talking about we're developing a website for this thing too, to have like links for people and everything. And one of the talks we talked about was kind of a little mentor program, not like a program, but just like someone like you, like if you have your link for anything that you want to link to, it's like, would you be into being a mentor for somebody, just to get on the phone with somebody or like FaceTime them or talk to them or something that's coming up? So that's something that, maybe we incorporate in there, but it is
absolutely
that just even a phone call will help out,
Yeah,
I think for sure. Yeah. That people would want to hear stuff from like guys like you, even if it's just like questions and answers. I think that's why this podcast is like pretty valuable, because most people want to hear is like kind of some sort of like reassurance or like some sort of like indication that they're on the right path, or like maybe just a confirmation that, oh yeah, I should hit up somebody to like, every other week, things like that. Like I'm not,
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
It's always like behind the scenes of like celebrities and people on camera and everything, but nobody really talks about like, the crew like that works on shows for 20 years that they watch, and millions of people watch them. And,
Yep.
it's like to hear from that, it's kind of a, inspiring thing.
I think it is. Yeah. And I think, I'm proof that anybody can do it. I mean, a farm boy from New Hampshire, so it's a great industry, and there's a lot of great people in it. And, I definitely want to be a mentor to the younger generation who are coming up through, so that we can, keep it that way. There was a cool story actually in that vein. It was just a one-day shoot I did down in Boston, and there was a young girl who was a PA on it. But I could tell she just was driven, And when she found out I worked on The Bachelor, she's like, "Oh, that's one of my favorite shows." She's like thinking about moving to LA, And long story short, I ended up getting her helping her get on the show as a PA. She moved to LA, and now she's like working in the casting department on the show, like, so it's just cool to be able to have those stories, that you were a little part in helping someone else.
I think in life in general, it's like we change the path of people every day. Everyone you interact with, you have the ability to change their path in a positive way, but also in a negative way. So if you're conscious of that, then it's like, okay, just even that conversation or that little tiny interaction helps. And just to feel like, okay, well, I actually helped to push that into a good way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think more people have to look at that stuff. One person can make a difference in a sense. So, not to get so deep, but
it's a deep podcast. No, it is. No, do you have any like you're just mentioning like you're shouting out your mentors and stuff like that from the past, but do you have any other like war stories where you see something that was inspiring, not just from like maybe somebody that you knew, or on set or something like that kind of like encourages like some sort of like any sort of like and something inspiring that you've seen in your time on any shows
that just kind of made you be like, oh shit, that's inspiring.
or that like that's like I might pay it forward one day with that or something, whether it be somebody helping you out or something, is somebody helping somebody else out.
Yeah, I mean, we both talked about it, but I mean, Kenny's one that comes to mind for sure. I mean, he's impacted so many people's careers, I think, and it's always in a positive way, So, yeah, he's definitely the first person that comes to mind when it comes to, having a big impact in a lot of people's careers and lives. And yeah, I mean, I hope I can be that person too, I guess. I don't know
I'm
if
sure
that
you're doing
answers
it already,
the
man.
question, but
Probably have an effect more than you're aware of at this point until somebody else gets on this podcast and name drops you just like you are for Kenny. Um, I mean, we talked about like, some shows like that you liked and that you were on and stuff like that, but like without in generalities, any horror stories on the converse side that that you thought were funny? I don't know, something, getting away from the deep aspect of this
just any like funny, weird situation that happened either on the road or just on any type of set.
Yeah, there was a Fox show, and I don't know what it ever ended up even being titled. I think it was a reality show in Fiji, and I think they ended up calling it "If Women Ruled the World" or something like that. But I remember it was they flew a huge crew out there, and they had already had art department and lighting out there for probably a month, like building these huge sets and stuff. And then we were just there for like a day, and then we all came on to set the next day when we were supposed to start. It may have been just a production meeting, and we were supposed to start the next day. I can't remember, but they announced that like they're sending everybody home. And it had something to do with the OJ trial, I believe, and Fox had aired something on that, and they were just nervous about a new show or something. But anyways, like it was this massive crew that all got sent home. And then they actually did end up like, that was, I think, maybe November of that year. And then in January, they actually brought us all back, and we actually shot the show in pouring rain pretty much the whole time. I remember that I still hate rain gear on a camera to this day, I think, because of that show. It was just constantly shooting with rain gear on, downpouring. And then I don't think the show ever aired after all of that. Or I think it was maybe on like Fox, one of the Fox Online or something later on. But yeah, it never aired like network Fox ever. So that was kind of like one of those crazy ones. And I mean, it was a lot of people in this industry that like, have been in it for a long time. They had like an all-star crew kind of type of deal too. It was one of those where like, man, every operator on that show is now either a director or a DP, and like it's one of those. It's like
that was back in the day where they were just like throwing out money because like the late 90s, early 2000s, I was on the show on CBS called an AC on the show called The Will. It was basically two sides of his family like competing for this guy's estate, and he was still alive. So it's not like they were winning anything. Yeah. So, and obviously, we went through the entire season traveling, everything like that, and they aired one episode and just canned it because they were just like throwing money everywhere. Do you have any like fuck up stories? I mean, I know everybody goes through their own double punching moments or dropping camera lenses moments and things like that. Do you have anything that you remember that when it happened, it kind of like traumatized you that it made you never do that again?
I mean, I've definitely,
because you're not perfect. You're great. Yeah. You're close. You're close, buddy. But you gotta give us something.
I've definitely had my double punch moments. One was on The Bachelor, actually, and it was with Chris Harrison when he was the host still, and he was and I had his single, and luckily, he's a super cool dude, and I just kind of like looked over my camera and I was like, I didn't even ask Kenny. I was just like, hey, Chris, can we do that one again for me? And he was cool enough to be like, hey, Kenny, can we do that one again? And nice. So he saved my butt. But yeah, nice. I remember that moment in particular. Another crazy Bachelor one was on the proposal. I had, there's the two cameras who have the singles of the kneel down. They're, this is, not just another rose, but like putting the ring on the finger. And my disc got lost. And that wasn't my fault, but like the disc from my camera for that scene got lost. and so they had to edit the show without like the close up.
Was this in Hawaii?
Missing a whole camera.
It was Hawaii. Yeah, it was Hawaii.
I was on that. I remember that, and that was infamous. Like that the entire, because that was when it was everything was shot on discs back then, and we had to travel with all the shot media. Back to the States and stuff like that. But like, I remember that was your camera.
Yeah, that was Hawaii, and it was. I mean,
well, that's not really your fault, though.
It wasn't my fault, really, but yeah, that was a big one because I mean, it's the climax of the show, you know, and one of the two main shots, and
no single
lost, and it's like.
All the way back though, last thing, like all the way back when you were like working on tube cameras for the first time ever in life, and did anybody not tell you to point the tube cameras at lights, and did you ever burn out tubes?
I learned that early on. Yeah, I almost burnt out. I almost burnt a tube out once. Yeah, but yeah, I did learn early on. Yeah, never point them at lights or anything bright. So yeah, I never fully burnt one out. But I do remember.
Oh, good for you.
A director yelling at me once, like, point that camera off the lights, you know.
For the young kids who are listening, like, you know, there are cameras that were made from tubes, and if you point them at lights that were too hot, they would burn out, and you'd have to very, very expensive. Instead of CCDs, you had tubes. So
yeah, look that up. Yeah, we're dating ourselves again.
No, it's called wisdom.
Yeah, it is wisdom.
Yes, past trauma equals wisdom. Well, that's awesome, dude.
Anything else you want to talk about before we cut?
I love how you. I'm sorry. I love how you kind of framed yourself, maybe unconsciously, on the interview framing on the 2/3, and you have the light right over your shoulder and the depth and the door. Like, I don't know if you did that on purpose, but it does seem like you're working right now.
I did.
You can't turn it off
there because I clicked on the camera real quick, and I was like, oh, it looks kind of dark back there. So yeah, there's always a little DP in me. I definitely, you know, like, oh, maybe I'll turn that light on then, and turn the bathroom light on so that there's a little light in that hallway. And
nice.
There's a window in front of me here, so
classic framing.
It's always going, you know. It's funny. I watch movies with the kids, and you know, they'll be quoting it like, you know, a week later or something, and I'm like, what? And they're like, don't you remember from the movie? And it's kind of bad, but I think I'm so visually orientated and so in it, and that's just always been my thing, that I don't remember movies, and you know, unless it's one I've watched a few times. I'll literally forget plots of movies because I think when I'm watching the movie, I'm just watching the lighting the whole time, you know, and thinking, oh, how did they move that camera? Or, you know, what did they do there? You know, and so the plot sometimes of movies escapes me because I'm so, that's just been always my thing.
We just can't turn it off, dude.
I watch movies differently a little bit too.
Same. Yeah. Who's your favorite DP that you kind of like aspire to?
That's a good question. I always liked Haskell Wexler. I think he's a legend, you know.
Yeah, man, legend for still advocating for that 10-hour day till the end.
That's where I knew his name from too.
Yeah, me too. Well, for the rental house then because of that, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? You guys have
not anybody in particular. I just remember more movies. I mean, obviously Deakins is, you know, he's the man, but
for sure.
But yeah, is there anything else you want to, you know, talk about too? Like, I'm just firing like stuff that people may want to find interesting about your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've kind of touched all the bases as far as, you know, literally from the Viewmaster all the way to, you know, future goals.
Do you have a favorite camera?
I mean, I still wish I had my old SRT 101, actually my old Minolta, you know, still
so
camera. It got stolen. I was so bummed because I have a great collection of old, both film cameras and, well, even a few digital ones, but film cameras and 35 millimeter cameras and, you know, all kinds of stuff that I've collected over the years. But I don't have my first ever old 35 millimeter because it got stolen. So, but yeah, favorite camera to shoot on though. I don't know. It's hard for me. They've changed so much over the years.
Yeah. Do you know what companies look you like the best? Like color space you like the best? We're getting into geek territory now.
Yeah.
We won't stay here for long.
Oddly not, as long as I've been doing it, as much as I'm into camera, I'm not a super geek when it comes to that. And so, you know, when I kind of, I've always been a Sony guy, and I think a lot of people would probably like snub that a little bit, but I don't know. I just like, I've always, you know, maybe it's just because I've used them the most, but I've always kind of been a Sony guy. But I mean, I definitely miss shooting on film even though too. I mean, I shot so much stuff on a Bolex back in the day, you know, and I think it's kind of unfortunate that kids don't have those kind of opportunities these days, you know, to shoot on film where you can't just like see this super HD monitor of like everything you're looking at and craft things based on that, where you really had to, you know, use a meter and
know what you're doing. Yeah.
And know what you're doing enough to like, okay, or at least, you know, be able to pull it off so that you had an image even, you know.
Right.
Film. So
yeah, dude, well, this has been awesome, man. This has been super interesting.
Thank you.
Loved listening to you.
Hell yeah.
We're gonna cut and then we'll continue geeking out after this.
All right. Thanks, Dre.